Good morning, everybody, and welcome to TLC Live at 11, más o menos, as every Wednesday. I'm Andrea Gomez, and I am a former Univision reporter. Normally, I don't introduce myself like that, but today we have a special show talking about media. That's why I am giving you a heads up saying that I am a former reporter in Univision.
And I am as well. I'm Cindy Garza. I worked for NBC here in Houston at Channel 2, along with a lot of other stations prior to that. We've been retired for a while, but it's been a crazy time in media. It's always been crazy, but the media has gone awry. It's gone astray. Has it always been like that? Today we have several former reporters and anchors and a
I'm
CNN,
brave.
I'm
brave
because they called their stations out for exactly what we're talking about today, which is censorship, media propaganda, their personal propaganda, the stations that is, and whether or not there is any credibility in TV anymore.
On the media.
Well,
in
exactly,
general.
exactly. In general, whether it's Spanish, English, CNN, Fox News, all of it.
Yeah, exactly. So we have today an exciting show, and we cannot thank enough for these people to do what they have done the past weeks, but also for being with us today in the show. So we're going to talk about Ivory Hecker, former Fox 26 here in Houston, and also April Moss, that she is a former CBS well, she's a meteorologist, but she's a former CBS reporter and meteorologist in CBS, and
in
also
Detroit.
yes, in Detroit. And also we're gonna have Scarlett Horton, that she's also a former Fox 26 here in Houston, and we're gonna have a former CNN in Espanol news director. Yes, and it's a very exciting show. But we're going to start with the videos that is being viral and is being all over the social media with Ivory Hecker and April Moss, and also a post from Facebook that it calls a Scarlett's job.
Right.
26 reporter Ivory Hecker is live in Montgomery County.
Thanks, guys. That's right. Before we get to that story, I want to let you, the viewers, know that Fox Corp has been muzzling me to keep certain information from you, the viewers. And from what I'm gathering, I am not the only reporter being subjected to this. I am going to be releasing some recordings about what goes on behind the scenes at Fox because it applies to you, the viewers. I found a nonprofit journalism group called Project Veritas.
So, Ivory, what just happened?
They send a reporter out there. They don't like what the person said, and then they turn around and punish the reporter. Does that make any sense? No. But I guess I'm supposed to know the narrative and stick with it instead of sticking with the facts.
And you guys can see those recordings and hear them tomorrow evening. Ivory Hecker, our latest profile in Courage, and Courage is contagious. So if you're out there and you're a real journalist, reach out to Veritas Tips at protonmail.com.
Good evening, and thanks for watching First Forecast. I'm meteorologist April Moss, and happy Father's Day. Today we saw temperatures above normal again, topping out at 85 degrees at Metro Airport. Plenty of sunshine today, but all good things must come to an end, and that starts as early as tomorrow morning with showers moving in around 8 a.m. And speaking of a brand new week, I will be sitting down this week with Project Veritas to discuss the discrimination that CBS is enforcing upon its employees. Tune in to Project Veritas for my full story. Now, later Monday, we will see those showers continuing through late morning, but by evening, we'll see dry conditions and more comfortable temperatures as well.
And this is the Facebook. Is this Scarlett Horton's Facebook? She posted her personal opinion about the presidential election back when she was at Fox 26 News, which got her fired. Lots of things to talk about today. If you watch CNN network news today, actually any station, any network station especially, they're throwing their biases around, their opinions about, whether it's presidential election or whether they're shoving down the vaccines down our throats, which some people say that it helps, some people say that it's not helpful, but regardless of what the angle is that they're trying to spin, there's definitely a spin on network television. And in fact, now we're learning that it's local. It's local everywhere. Ivory Hecker is with us today. She's one of the clips that you just saw from Fox 26 News. And she called out her station on the air live. What I can't believe, Ivory, is that your photographer or the producers and the directors didn't stop you. Are you there?
Yeah, I did. Yes, I am. Hi. I don't know if there's a delay, but yeah, I'm here, and I didn't know if they would cut my feed or what, but I just kept it going.
What exactly
I'm glad
happened?
I got the word out.
So tell us the story. Why did you decide to do that on the air, and why did you decide to go to Project Veritas, which is, I see that you are in their studio right now.
Right. I'm actually teamed back up with them. We're working right now on telling more journalist stories, because this is not just me. I mean, as you saw, April Moss came out too, which her story is a little bit different than mine, but there's so many similar stories of news bosses suppressing certain information and then over exaggerating other information to try to get a narrative going. And so that's my point. I've witnessed this narrative news telling like never before in the past year, and I thought it's time the public knows, especially when all I'm doing is collecting facts on the ground and then getting disciplined for disseminating those facts. When a reporter gets disciplined for letting citizens know the facts that are happening in their community, that is wrong. That is unjournalistic, and the public deserves to know. So that's why I did it.
So if these things are going on way before COVID-19, or you started just seeing it when COVID-19 hit the world?
Well, there were a few stories that got censored out prior to COVID-19, but you really saw a strong narrative when COVID-19 hit, and it for the first time in a long time, the national story was the local story, and the narrative had to all be the same, and so that it became more glaring. And when they caught me in their snare as a trained journalist doing journalism, and they hired me to do journalism, and then they disciplined me for it, as going so far as to cross over into defaming me to teach me a lesson. That's when I said, okay, this is too much. We got to let the public know that facts are being hidden. People doing journalism are being disciplined for journalism. You know, that's kind of what happened.
Okay, so we're going to give the public just a brief preview of what really happened. You were sent out on a story regarding hydroxychloroquine and how some doctors were using that to treat COVID. What exactly did your station do when you came back with that interview?
So this story last August, Fox sent me to cover COVID treatment at a hospital. The job was to cover as much of what's happening as possible, I thought. But then when the part about hydroxychloroquine came out, they said, okay, no, nobody's supposed to know that part of the story. Let's talk about the other aspects of treatment, but hide the fact that the doctor says he's using it and that it's working. This is not a doctor I sought out. Fox sent me to cover him. Then they didn't like that part of his narrative, so they tried to direct the narrative another way. They initially told me, get that soundbite out of the TV package, so it never aired on TV. I said, why? They said it needs more context of everything else he's using. So I put the entire context, his entire recipe of exactly how he treats COVID patients, on my Facebook instead. But see, their excuse of needing more context was not reality, because they ended up disciplining me anyways for doing exactly what they told me to do, because they just didn't want people to see that soundbite at all. So they went on to put me on a social media lockdown, tell me I'd failed as a reporter, and then write a defamatory internal memo about me, destroy me internally, to teach me to get back in line and stick with the narrative. Not the facts, the narrative. So that's what happened.
Did they tell you about who their advertisers were? Is that why they had a problem with that?
No, they did not say. They would never say something like that. No, since then I've done some digging to try to figure out, is this money motivated or what is it? And I think it's a combination of things. I think they're very afraid of lawsuits right now. And I guess a gossip site said that maybe my coverage of hydroxychloroquine would lead to deaths. And last thing Fox wants is a wrongful death lawsuit for someone who took hydroxychloroquine or something. So they're doing a lot of preventative work to avoid lawsuits. And when you hide facts and discipline genuine journalists because you're afraid of a lawsuit, that's not, you're not a journalistic organization anymore. And so that could be part of it. But also I went on to learn that my news director Susan would have regular meetings with the sales director Susie, that they would coordinate apparently their sales and their news, from what I'm learning from sales insiders that I've talked to. I learned that that deals were struck with money apparently coming from the CDC. So I have a lot of questions, and I have not gotten all the facts on how much money is coming to Fox related to this pandemic. But any TV viewer who watches the commercial breaks knows that the pharmaceutical industry is funding every TV station. You see those pharmaceutical ads in the commercial breaks on every TV station. So you do have to factor that in as well.
Right. And Ivory, you also inspire April Moss, that we also have her on the show. And April, welcome to TLC Live, and thank you so much for taking your time to be with us. So how long you were, planning or thinking about doing what you just did? And also, if you got inspired by Ivory, tell us your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, she is one of my most favorite people. I respect her so much for what she's done to stand up for the American people. And, I had been really frustrated with situations happening at my station for quite some time, several months. Tried to do everything I could internally to affect change, having discussions with the producers of our Community Connect show to say, hey, listen, we need to be careful on how these stories that we're representing to people are being spun and very left leaning. It wasn't balanced. And so I had chosen to go to Project Veritas several months ago and really wanted to know, is there anything that they could do to help me be able to affect some change within my organization. So unfortunately, I tried every avenue possible to be able to help bring to light some things that I wanted to cover regarding even COVID. As many of you know, Michigan got hit the worst, one of the worst states that was hit by this virus, but the lockdowns that ensued from our governor is what was really hurting the people. So I'm watching, the communities around where I'm living very much impacted by these very strict COVID mandates and lockdown policies. And so when I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Joni Caldoun, who is one of Governor Gretchen Whitmer's chief medical officers, she was very much responsible for the vaccine rollout program in Michigan when it was first available. And I interviewed her within several weeks of that vaccine rollout program and really wanted to ask her some pointed questions regarding the safety and efficacy of the vaccine. Now, my producer had written the script for me, and it was all softball questions, nothing to do with the vaccine. The whole slant of this interview was going to be about who inspires her and how did she get to the point where she's at today. I mean, very feel-good story, and I felt like it was incredibly disrespectful to the American people who are watching our show to not ask legitimate questions about the vaccine. I mean, this is her job. This is what she does. If there's anyone to ask about it, it would be her. And I had done a lot of my own research on my own to just get an understanding of these vaccines. And so I came with a lot of information, and I did ask some pointed questions to her regarding the long-term safety and efficacy of these new vaccines. And she made a statement that these vaccines actually prevented hospitalization. And I knew that was false. So I called her out on it and said, I need you to clarify that statement, because we have seen studies and I have looked at websites that have shown people have been hospitalized by this vaccine. So please clarify what you're saying here. And she continued to basically say that in the clinical trials, this vaccine was extremely safe and effective. And my producer in my ear was saying, move on to the next question, get off of that topic. So
Wow.
that upset me so much. And after that show aired, I had a conversation over the phone with that producer, and he said, why did you ask those questions about the vaccine? And I said, listen, you guys were showing B-roll of her getting the vaccine in her arm. This was a very timely question. It was an appropriate question. And it's irresponsible of us, if as journalists, to interview someone that has information about an emergency use authorized experimental product that you're pushing out onto the public without giving them some real facts, especially because I knew that after the senior citizens were going to be allowed to receive this vaccine, the next push was going to be on women and pregnant women and children. And so we owe it to the public for them to be able to have informed, to inform them. And so just like Ivory said, when your news organization begins to censor information and it's all one-sided towards, the vaccine is the only cure, but they don't want you to talk about, side effects or a possible danger to your health, or, heaven forbid, even allowing people to understand that many medical insurance companies will not even cover you if you're injured from a vaccine, a COVID vaccine. They won't cover your medical expenses. You're on your own on that. And that also goes for several life insurance companies. So these people who are being persuaded by the media to take an emergency use authorized experimental product, but not being given the other tools to say, you know what, wait, I need to think about this for a minute. I need to make sure I have all the facts before I just go ahead and get the jab. It's irresponsible, and that's when the media becomes the enemy of the people.
Right, I agree. I totally agree. I, for one, had COVID and I took hydroxychloroquine and they threw the kitchen sink at me. I got better in 2 weeks. I still didn't have taste or smell for 6 weeks, but I had the vaccine. I needed it because my doctors were telling me I had to have it. Everyone should have it. And I seriously had some difficulties with it. Too personal to go into, but there were some serious side effects. And I called my doctors and they just told me that, well, anyway, regardless, I had serious side effects. And it's not FDA approved. Let's just be honest. It's not FDA approved. And we are being forced to take these vaccines that we are not sure. I don't even know if it's safe for children to take it. But
Ivory, after you inspire April, and something else has been going on after that you went on the air and you went with Project Veritas. I mean, and other reporters or journalists is being like, getting to you and telling you that they want to do the same, they feel the same.
I've heard from, I think, more than 30 different journalists from across America, as well as foreign countries now, who've dealt with incredibly similar situations where they're trained in journalism, they're trying to practice journalism and getting shut down by their bosses, even disciplined by their bosses for putting certain facts out to the public. So this is a big problem. These media companies have conflicting interests sometimes that get in the way. And when a journalist is disciplined for collecting and disseminating facts, and other journalists see that, and it is a rampant problem, what those other journalists then do is they get timid. And there is a crisis of timid journalism in America, where a lot of journalists don't even want to step outside the narrative to cover certain facts. There's giant sections of facts that go uncovered. And I think what April touched on with vaccines, a lot of facts about vaccines are not being touched. Journalists are afraid to touch on them because you do get disciplined sometimes for letting people know the facts. I know when I was assigned to vaccines, my boss specifically said that she knows that 3,000 people had just died after vaccination, according to the CDC, and that I was not supposed to let anyone know that. That is very strange. That is very creepy. You should be transparent with people, with informed consent. If you are getting this vaccine, sometimes people do die after vaccination. We don't know all the facts yet. It's all coming in still, but just lay it out there. Be transparent with people. But yeah, I'm not the only one. April's not the only one. We're getting more people to tell their stories. It's a scary thing for a journalist to come forward and tell their true story about corruption in the newsroom, because they hate, we hate to go against our news family. I loved the family at Fox. I still do, but I need to expose some things. So Project Veritas and I are working on this, trying to tell some more stories. So stay tuned for that.
I know you guys are like running out of time, but just last question or last two questions. You guys feel that only conservative journalists are getting punished for this, or it's everybody? And also,
Absolutely
what is
not.
the?
No, I'm not a conservative journalist. I'm a truth-seeking journalist. This is not about political views, although I will tell you, as an unbiased truth-seeking journalist who's neither conservative nor liberal, that there is a left-leaning slant in newsrooms across America. It is a leftist culture in newsrooms, and I have had multiple right-leaning journalists come up to me and tell me that they pretend to be leftist to protect themselves. So that, yes, that is a problem, that people are afraid of being targeted. In fact, I've in working with Project Veritas here, we're talking to all these journalists who are coming into me and telling me their stories. And I did just hang up the phone with a guy who basically got just ripped apart by his company after they found out he was a conservative. He was doing straight journalism on the news, but because his personal views were conservative, they found a way to alienate him, to treat him poorly, and to eventually kick him out of the company, as we're learning. I'm still collecting the facts on this guy's story, but yes, when you touch on this, there is this culture of leftism in newsrooms. That's not to say that left-leaning journalists don't get dealt with. If a left-leaning journalist tries to pursue the facts on the ground that don't fit the narrative, they're going to be taken care of too in certain situations. So it's not just right-leaning reporters who have issues. The narrative is the narrative, from what I'm gathering.
Right. And when we were in TV, I know that it was definitely left back then, and that's been a long time ago, always leaning towards the left. We have Scarlett Horton, who worked for Fox 26 as well, right before you, Ivory. And Scarlett, tell us what happened with you covering the election. I think it was a presidential election.
Yeah, it was. This is so long ago, but I think the story is still relevant now, because I think more people are catching on to the fact that the news is left leaning. I think after the Trump election, it became a lot more apparent, but I think it's always been that way. For me, my story, going off of Ivory and Susan, I had the same bosses as Ivory. I had the same people in that newsroom as Ivory. They're still there. The general manager, same guy. A lot of things happened in that newsroom that made me sick to my stomach because of my personal beliefs. I am a conservative. I'm also a Christian. And the things that I heard in that newsroom ate at me every single day. I had producers tell me not to cover certain racial stories, saying, hey, if the suspect was Black, do not say that the suspect was Black. Say the suspect, 48-year-old so-and-so, was arrested for killing 2 people. But if the suspect was white, I was 100% absolutely supposed to put that the suspect was white, 48, his name, yada, yada, killed this amount of people. And I tell you what, I went to my fiance at the time every single day and I say, I can't do this anymore. It was something that was a recurring thing for me. And I also had approached a producer. This was during the election. Hillary Clinton, her email investigation had just been reopened. And the producer for that specific 6 p.m. newscast, this was at 2 o'clock that her email investigation had been opened. That 6 p.m. producer could well have put that in that 6 p.m. newscast, decided not to mention it. But not only that, the first 15 minutes, which we all know as news people, the first 15 minutes of the newscast is very important. That entire A block was about Trump and his locker room talk. So I walked up to Susan and I said, Susan, you realize that the email investigation has been reopened and Hillary's not mentioned at all. The election is in 2 weeks and, we haven't even covered this at all. Susan, oh yeah, we should probably put that in there. I'll talk to Matthew. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So we went through that newscast, not letting people know. Obviously, it was a critical time. Again, my blood's boiling inside. The night of the election, Dart, the general manager, walked up to me. Everyone's there's tears coming out of some producers' eyes because Trump is winning left and right, all of these states. And I got a smirk on my face because I was happy. Of course I was happy. And I'm just kind of sitting there. Dart walks up to me and he goes, do you see this? Do you see he's winning? He's winning. And I go, I know he is. And he takes a step back and says, who are you voting for? Who did you vote for? And I couldn't believe, one, that he asked me that. And two, I just kind of threw up on my hands and said, I don't know, Dart, I'm not going to let you know that. But, the next day I posted my post. I turned to my husband and said, I'm going to post this. I'm done with this. I've got to stay true to my beliefs. And, reporters, every day Isaiah Carey posts about how he's sick, of conservative talk radio show. He referred to Senator Ted Cruz as the Antichrist on his show on air. Doesn't get punished. Doesn't matter if he's liberal. He gets to believe what he wants. I posted on my personal Facebook page. It was private. One of my friends who was liberal, which is okay, I've forgiven them my heart, posted that post, took a screenshot, sent it to the Houston Chronicle. So it wasn't public. Only my friends could see it. There's the post right there. That's only part of it, by the way. I went into a couple other different things. But my main thing was the racial issue and the racial divide in the country that Obama had caused because of selective journalism covering of racial murders. If it was a white person that murdered the person, the story's not in the news. If it's a black person, if it's a white person, the story's in the news. If it's a black person that does any murders, we see that in Chicago every single day. Every day right now, somebody who's, African-American maybe have murdered somebody in Chicago, but the story's not being covered. It doesn't matter because that's not the story that the narrative that the media wants to push. Anyways,
ladies, I know you guys need to go because you have other things going on during the day. Please, last message, each one, before you guys go off the air.
Anyone can start.
I think the narrative needs to go away. Truth-seeking needs to happen. Journalism school warned young journalists about meta-narratives and avoiding them. I was taught that in journalism school. Sure enough, it's happening. It needs to stop. We need to be pursuing the facts on the ground without being disciplined for those facts. And Scarlett's 100% right about this culture in newsrooms of disciplining people for coming off as right-wing. So journalists, regardless of their leanings, try to pretend to be leftists and push leftist stories to protect their careers. That's horrible. And we need to gut this out and get back to straight facts, truth-seeking, and that's it.
Ivory, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for what you are doing, because we're journalists and we really are supporting you, but we also thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
April, the last message for you.
I would just say, the power is in the hands of the American people and all of the viewers. If you are seeing this type of narrative that, is fake and false and phony, you have the power to stop tuning in. So, always look for an objective story. Look for all of the angles. Don't just trust whatever someone tells you on the screen. This is how we got into this mess in the first place, with people believing, propaganda that's being pushed out by mainstream media. So you need to be a discerning person and make sure you have all angles and all sides. If you're seeing reporting happen that is not giving both sides of the story, then you need to find your news somewhere else. And again, when we the people continue to seek after truth There's a lot of great information out there. You can find it when you research for yourself as well.
Thank you so much, April, and thank you so much, Ivory. You guys can go off the air. I know you guys have a lot of things going on right now. And last message for you, Scarlett.
I think just to go off of what those two ladies just said, I think journalists also have the responsibility of coming forward like April and Ivory. My story was a bit different. I just decided to kind of toot my horn a different way on Facebook. But at the same time, if you see corruption in your newsroom, I hope that this word gets out and people have the courage to speak up, because if there's enough journalists that do that, then change will happen, new organizations will be made, and those organizations will get, news across the way that it should be, the way that it always, should have been.
Scarlett, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you.
And now we're gonna stay with the king of the show today, because he's the only man.
Willie Lora.
He's the only man in the show around these powerful women. Willie Lora, my dear friend, ¿cómo estás, amigo?
Muy bien. A pleasure to be with you guys. What an amazing show. What an amazing first half hour of the show. Really proud of the work that the journalists have done, and the bravery and how they've been able to actually tell the truth. I think that what we lost in all this is the advantage of being of using our critical thinking. Journalism schools, the first thing they teach you, you have to question everything, and we owe ourselves to the viewers and the community we served. And in a special time when you have COVID going on, there are so many questions. You have to ask those relevant questions. Try to hide it, try to prevent it, try to do something for you not to do the work that is supposed to be done. It's really questionable. But in the end, for me, it's not surprising. It's something that we've seen for a long time that has been on the work. But right now, it's just the worst. Right now, we have zero credibility as an industry, not only in the U.S., but also internationally.
Willie, tell us a little bit about your background and, why I invite you, because, you have not only a lot of experience, but you're still around, and now you're independent, and you're being seen the before and after in what is going on in the media. So tell us a little bit about your background.
I've been in this business for about 30 some years, the business of television and broadcast, and worked in different networks from Univision, Telemundo, ESPN, Fox Local in Miami, and 20 years at CNN. And after those 20 years, I actually went independent, and I actually now I have my own consulting firm, and I work teaching ethics and journalism. I work on getting preparing newsrooms, doing digital integration, a whole lot of different things that I'm doing regarding the business and the industry. But I'm also speaking lately. I'm speaking a lot about what's going on in our business and the reason why we are where we are. And I think it's important that people understand that what you're hearing and what you're seeing on our industry, a lot of the times are not the truth, and a lot of the time is pure narrative, and it doesn't serve the purpose of actually educating our viewers and the country about important issues. And part of having a strong democracy is having a media that is responsible and reporting the facts as they are and serve the community, which is the whole purpose of being doing what we do. And I think that's important. That's why I'm still here and I'm still doing what I do.
I was in journalism school. You went to journalism school as well. And they taught us not to be biased. In fact, quite the opposite, and not to have an opinion. And you report straight facts. That has never been done, in my opinion. And I've been off the air, for 17 years now. I've been out of journalism. It was happening when I was in the newsroom. It's happening. Yeah. I think it's more prevalent today. It's more blatant today. How are we getting away with this? And where do we get real, solid, unbiased news?
And is it double standards in the modern media?
Oh yeah. And I think that some people hate me when I say that, but I don't think we're going to see that change in this generation of what's going to happen in the industry, because it basically became corporate. It went from the business of news covering and reporting to a corporation where special interest is actually what matters. It's like Ivory was talking about how what they referring to her on the video that we all saw as well. It's not what the community wants, it's what the GM wants, it's what corporate wants. So it's basically telling you it doesn't matter that you went to journalism school. It doesn't matter that you want to report the facts as they are, especially when question needs to be asked about important issues. It's about what our corporate people are telling us that we need to say, and what the general manager is saying that we need to say. And you've been in the business. You remember that those editorial calls in the morning, those editorial meetings in the morning are basically fed out of the information that reporters in the field will bring in. They're the one talking to the sources. They're the one talking to the community, to the professionals. So when we go into an editorial meeting and I want to know what's going on with this story, I'm going to go first to that reporter and tell me what you found. Tell me what it is. Talk to me about the story. Why is this important? Those are the questions that as a news director you ask. You don't go and say, no, I don't want that because no, stay away from that. Why do I want to stay away from that when the community is actually having questions about that? We just found out not too long ago that Dr. Fauci, which is the person in charge of our COVID for the entire country, is being lying for the entire year. It's been doing all these things on television. And we allow that to happen, and the networks allow that to happen without even questioning. And that's why we need that critical thinking to come back in order to gain some sort of credibility. But, the problem is, and this go back even before the election, the 2016 election. Remember that a year and a half before the election, all the news organizations were saying that there was not a single thread of evidence that Trump will win the election. It was they made me laugh commentary that, Trump is going to run. He'll never win the election. We all saw it on television. Even until the day before the election, the New York Times were saying that Hillary Clinton was going to win the election by 98%. Something that was totally incredible. I said, look, that's not going to happen. And then what happened? He won the election. And I do a lot of conferences, and I ask this question in the room to journalists. I say, look, just go ahead and raise your hands who believe that Hillary Clinton was going to win the election. 99% of the people raise their hands. And then I ask the following question: why did you believe that? And they say, well, because the media told us that was going to happen. So that's where the problem lies. And then what happened? The media, was completely discredited. The poll companies were also discredited because none of what they said was true. And so what happens, and then the glove came out, and we saw the tweets. Social media had given the space to a lot of the journalists to express their opinion, and 99% of their opinions are liberal. So, when you try to do a story pretending to be balanced, and then you go on social media to look at your posting, and you're so far to one side of the spectrum that, your credibility is out the window. And a lot of that is the responsibility of the news director, because the news director is supposed to control the editorial of every station. You meet with the sales, you meet with the general manager, you discuss issues. Obviously, you cannot cover everything in half an hour, 1 hour, but there's certain stories that they need to be covered, like the Hillary email story that April was talking about. Something like that. And the last point I want to make in terms of that, remember what happened with the Hunter Biden story during the campaign. All the networks came together and pressured social media to censor it. We need to censor it because it's false. It's a false narrative. Why are we going to allow that falsehood to be on air? And then 50 supposedly former intelligence agents came out with a letter saying that was Russian propaganda when it never was. They all knew it wasn't. They all knew that the FBI had the laptop back in the day, about a year before. And as we know now, all that information was true, that it was his laptop and it was his information, and that's when you need to ask the question. It needs to have that critical thinking. We can't, as journalists, we cannot take critical thinking out of the equation of producing a story, because that's what actually takes you to the facts. If you don't question even yourself, there's something that they teach you also that is, your personal opinions or bias, you put it on the side when you're going to work the story.
Right.
That's the way it should be. Facts are facts. I'm not going to hide it because I don't agree with it. And that Hunter story was a huge and still a huge story because he's the son of the president of the United States, which is pretty much, what he has become. And it's a liability because of all the information that we've seen that in terms of money from Ukraine and from China, it's a liability to the president of the United States. It's an important story to cover, and then for the entire media to go out and say, look, we're not going to believe it. We're not going to report it. Please, Facebook, please, Twitter, censor it. Don't report. I never seen anything like that. When we're supposed to be protecting freedom of the press and in protecting our colleagues, No, just go ahead and censor it because we don't agree with the narrative. It's pretty sad, to be honest.
Well, he was a liability to his father, clearly, and
It
that's
still
why they
is.
tried. Yeah, exactly. I mean, forget about the moral compass that he lacks,
Yeah.
you know, and Biden, by the way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway,
But Willie, the next question is you were mentioning social media. What is the impact that social media has on journalists these days?
It's been the worst. It's been the worst because basically has shown that, and I was looking at some number the other day. It's like 80% of the stuff that goes on Twitter, like give you an example, is produced by 10% of liberals that, they just tweet things all day. So they change the narrative, they move the narrative. And then social media, as the name, when they came out as a social platform, it was for you to post, your parents' photos, your social events, and yada yada. But now it became another way to publish news content. But at the same time, there's a lot of fake news on that news content that goes out there. And the model of repeating things, even though that is false, that becomes, for some people, becomes true. It has an impact on society. So, and I remember about 4 years ago, more or less, I gave a conference in Central America about the future of digital programming and digital content. And that was one of my questions that I was talking to people. I said, look, I have a lot of concerns about having an enterprise like the internet not regulated in terms of content. If it's going to be used as a publisher, it needs to be obviously monitored, because what they were doing back in those days was bad, but what we're doing right now is horrible. It's horrible.
Right.
They have so much power. Even they've been able to change governments. They've been able to change big narrative. So it's not a small thing that we're talking about. It is a big problem.
Absolutely.
The uncontrollable weight of social media.
Willie, it's you were talking about before we start the show about an article that it just came out, and it was talking exactly about the media in the United States.
Yeah, the article came out a couple of days ago. They did a poll, international poll, and they talked about. They talked about not only trust, but they took 10 to 15,000 people on this poll, and they talked about trust on media, trust on news media, more directly news. It was general media, but when they focus on news media, we are actually at the bottom of the list internationally. I think it's number 29 in terms of credibility. It's like there's no, because it's impossible to maintain credibility when 98% of your coverage is negative to one political side of the spectrum in the country. It can be healthy. And you can see it on the White House press conference that we've seen, the difference when the former president was at the White House, how 98% of the media was just like jump on him every single second. Mm-hmm. And on this one, there's only one reporter that asked some tough question, which is Peter Doocy. Then the other ones are talking about what color the ice cream he ate today. Is he going to change the color of the plane? With so many, hardcore issues
Right.
that they are. But you can see the difference. I'm here in Geneva, and he came here to the summit, and it was sold in the U.S. as a great summit, and he came out strong. And no, it was a lie. He actually came out weaker. The stronger player was ended up being Putin over here in the summit.
Well, I have a 17 and 15-year-old, two daughters who don't want to vote when they are eligible to vote because they say that their votes aren't going to count. They don't trust the media. They think that everyone is putting on, their censorship, which we clearly have seen. The night of the election, Willie, I was watching, and I normally just flip around to all the network stations. I was watching CNN, and then I turn around and go to Fox News, and I was confused when I was watching Fox News. Normally, they're more, I guess, a little conservative. That night, I felt like I was watching CNN, I was watching something. They turned totally left, which I had never seen before until the night of the election. You having worked for CNN and being a news director, did you see that as it was blatant in my opinion?
Oh yeah, I think what happens was that they saw that there's a business opportunity. If everybody was 99% of them were pushing towards Biden winning the election, They wanted to be in that right because they're going to change president tomorrow, but they still going to be in business. And like I was saying earlier, like it went from the business of journalism to business news, business first, then news, and that's the model. And like Ivory was saying earlier, you've seen the commercials, you've seen the influence of pharma on their air, and and all these networks there, just because we've seen how much of the vaccine is going out, and we're talking about billions of dollars. I interview people from Pfizer for my show, my radio show. One of the person working on developing the vaccine, and two things are pretty clear. They were going to have it done by October, which they did, but they never came out with it until after the election. And they were putting $1 billion of their own money to produce it, not even taking money for the government. Why? Because they were going to make billions and billions of dollars out of it. So I go back to what I was saying. It's like the critical thinking and asking questions is gone, and we need to continue to do that. During the election night, this, I've been seeing this I covered six presidential election more or less, and what I saw was like, wow, things have changed, but it was there back in the days, but it's worse now. And I can give you two simple examples. I don't, you guys remember the war, I think it was the war in Iraq, the way we were seeing at CNN every day in the corner there was a logo with the number of soldiers that were die every day. That had a psychological effect on the people going against the war, and it was put there for a purpose. It wasn't there just because, well, we needed to have a count of the amount of soldiers that were dying every day. The same thing was used with COVID. With COVID, I don't know if you remember, every day we were having a slate on the side, how many people got infected, how many people died. The election came in, the inauguration was on the 20th, and the 21st, they were gone. There were no more graphics with the amount of people that were dying, and it was gone. Why? Because he had a purpose. And I don't know if you guys read the article from the Time magazine where they actually conceded it. They said it really clearly. Look, we all work with the DNC, talking about social media, traditional network. They all work with the DNC to get rid of Trump. Why? Because they're saying the justification was that we're trying to save democracy. And it is in their piece. They're not even denying it. So when you see things like that, it's like, wow, our industry is gone. It's gone. It's a good thing that there's still people like the ladies we had before that they're still trying to do the work. They're putting the spotlight on what's going on in the newsroom. But to see them say clearly, look, we colluded all together because we needed to get rid of Trump and because we needed to save democracy. That is really troubling, to say the least.
Willie, it's any source that we can trust these days in journalism?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
No.
Yeah.
What? Well, and I'll give you an example as to why. Which were like the two big newspapers that everybody trusted, and they had all the credibility in the world: the New York Times and the Washington Post, right? So now they're both propaganda outlets. The intelligence community uses the New York Times to leak them information when they want to go after somebody, and the Washington Post became the propaganda arm of the DNC. So then you think about, so if those were the two papers that will go to find reliable information, they're gone. They're gone, and and then that goes without saying. If you go to ABC and you talk and you listen to George Stephanopoulos, was the head of communications for former President Bill Clinton, is he going to be fair and balanced? Of course not.
No.
So it is laughable, but that's where we are. And the worst thing of all is that we have gone from having news stories, really well done news stories, to have 24/7 opinion shows, which is really cheap to produce. Right. And then you pay the spinners from each side to come in and spin stuff all day. Then the public get misinformed. They don't understand anything. And they're making a lot of money because that's what they're doing. And that's just horrible.
Well, Willie, I look at it like this. If we treated every story we covered like we do a murder, God forbid we call out the wrong suspect as being the suspect, right? We'd get fired. Yeah. We'd get sued. Same thing. Yeah. We need to treat every single story with facts, regardless of the angle. Regardless if it looks good or bad, we need to do that, because I know that if we don't, well, no one's going to watch TV. Who's watching TV anymore?
Well, I'll give you another example as to of that type of coverage. We have the biggest domestic crisis in the southern border. Like it is a
Yes.
humanitarian crisis we have on the
Right.
southern border, right? So, but it doesn't get reported. If it doesn't get reported, it's like it never happened. The president doesn't want to mention it. The vice president goes to Guatemala, the wrong place to talk about the source of the problem, because the source of the problem is Salvador, Honduras,
Yeah.
right? And now we have 50,000 that came through from Venezuela. So she doesn't go to the place. She goes to a place that they can be kind of nice to her. And then
Right.
she goes and talked about don't come. And then the week after, the Homeland Security say, oh, now you can come back because now we have the refugee program is actually open again. So this mixed messages, and we have that. But then what does the network do to cover them and say, okay, we're not going to report on that. If the country doesn't know about it, it's like it never happened. So, and that is like the biggest domestic crisis that the country has right now. The president, we have a collapsed building in Miami, and which is a horrible story. And a lot of people are still missing there. My heart goes out to those families. But we have thousands of people coming in through the border, all kinds of people. You have your domestic, your biggest domestic crisis.
Right.
You have it on your hands, and you haven't gone to the border. And you have to actually, former President Trump had to come out and say that he was going to the border to have Kamala Harris go to El Paso, where things are not happening because things are happening in McAllen, just to get a photo up with the Border Patrol and to talk about how great they are and how they actually inherit the crisis from the former administration. And nobody questions that. It's like, you're lying. The president of Guatemala just told you that the crisis was because of you.
Right.
The president of Mexico told you that the crisis was because of you. The immigrants are actually coming through the border are saying that they came because of you. And you're sitting down and telling the country that you inherit the problem. It's laughable, but she needs to be questioned. And that's the problem they reported. When you don't have the facts to question somebody like that, obviously, unless you're on a payroll, like, in a funny way to say it,
Right.
unless you don't want to cover the story, you don't have the facts. But those are the facts. And people, if you don't, you can read it somewhere else, you can investigate and find out, but you're not going to get it from the network.
Yeah,
How is it that she's going to say to, on that interview, she is like, oh yeah, I've been to the border. And it's like, no, you haven't been to the border. Well, but I haven't been to Europe. How crazy is that from a vice president to say?
Right.
Your problem is not with Europe. The U.S. doesn't have a border with Europe.
Yeah.
You're
Right.
responsible for that problem. So, but you have to be critical. You have to ask those questions. And if you don't ask them, we're not doing anybody any favor.
Willie, we're running out of time. Before we go off the air, the last message, and tell us also about a project that you're working on and you're about to launch.
Okay, so my message is stay focused, do research, investigate. Don't take everything for granted because you watch it on the news, mostly misleading in a way. Find other sources to cross information to try to get to the bottom of the truth. Ask questions, ask the hard question. I think that's really important. That's my message. In terms of what we're doing, I'm working on a project now to launch the first Spanish radio, conservative Spanish radio in the country. It's going to be an interesting dynamic. We're not going to depend out on the other Spanish network for the for their information, because we know what they're doing and how they're doing it. We want to make sure that we get a balanced news and information, really the honest truth. We want to go that route. We want to bring back journalism the way that it should be. We want to tell the stories. And the opinion shows will be the opinion shows, just like it should be. There are opinion shows and there's going to be news shows. And the difference will be that we will do what people loved about journalism, and we're going to be honest about it. The shows that will be conservative, there'll be conservative opinion. That's the way it should be. We're not going to masquerade our news shows as something that they're not. And that's the model. We want to go back to real journalism. We want to inform our community, and we want to make sure that they have the right information so that they can make decisions.
Right.
Great.
Reporters.
And
Thank you so much.
We'll let you know as soon as we get that on.
Oh yeah, I can
on
wait.
it.
I can't wait. Willie, thank you so much for your time. And I
Thank
know you are in Switzerland right now, so it's a different time. But thank you so much for taking the time and being with us on TLC Live.
Thank you. For
Love
me,
you.
it's been an honor. So I look forward to being with you more. So count on me anytime you guys want me to come back.
Great.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank
Ciao.
you, Willie. Gracias. Nos vemos pronto.
Okay.
Well,
Gracias.
thank you so much, everybody, for watching us. What a show. Oh,
What a
my God,
show,
on
yeah.
fire.
Yeah, I know, and there's so much more to say about this. I mean, we're cutting it short, but basically, I kind of want to say, and I want to end this with, reporters, don't be afraid or intimidated by politicians. Ask the hard questions. Don't give them softball questions. Get the truth,
Yeah.
because I know for a fact these politicians can be intimidating, and what they are telling you isn't always the fact or the truth. They are going to spin it the way they want to spin it. Not all politicians, but I'm pretty much thinking I'm jaded. After watching this show, I'm totally jaded.
Yeah, and join us in Texas Latino Conservatives. Go to texaslatinoconservatives.com. You're going to have all the information about our organization, and also you're going to be able to see all the shows. This show, for sure, it's one of my favorite ones because, you know, it brings us back in our journalist time and you know,
and what we learned.
And what we learn, and unfortunately, what is journalists these days. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you guys next Wednesday in TLC Live. Nos vemos pronto. Chao, chao.
Ciao.